a colleague of mine interested in commuting on an electric scooter asked me if they should buy the Apollo City Pro. And I said no, not yet. I can't wholly recommend the scooter, and the reason is gremlins, and that's with the scooter itself and Apollo, the company.
Touted as the most integrated scooter of 2022, the new Apollo City Pro comes packed with features: dual 500-watt motors, 61-kilometer range, max speed of 51 kilometers, variable regen braking, low maintenance drum brakes, triple spring suspension, self-healing tires, turn signals, and a fantastic water resistance rating outpacing the vast majority of other scooters, including Apollo's own offerings. But that's on paper. How does that actually translate to the real world? Well, after 500 kilometers on this scooter, I have to say, pretty good. It lives up to the hype in nearly every department, but what prevents me from recommending this scooter to newcomers and the technically challenged is what I find lacking in a few critical areas, mainly the braking and maintenance. And if that's all you wanted to know, then please leave a like and have a great day. But if you want a thorough and nuanced explanation, well, here we go. So I'm going to go over all the components of the scooter, then review the riding experience, the braking, real-world range, etc., and finally conclude with the good, the bad, and the ugly. So unboxing the scooter is pretty simple. The app and the manual have guides to get everything set up, leaving no guesswork. And starting with these wide handlebars, the basic black grips hold on pretty tight to the handlebars. However, they aren't locked, so they will move a little if you're someone who grips tightly. They are a bit on the thick side, so if you're riding with gloves, it can feel a little big. And I decided to change them out for these bike grips, which are slightly longer and not as thick. And I don't think it's necessary to replace the stock grips, but if you want to add some personality, the link is down below. The throttle and regen brake levers are symmetrically identical. Right is throttle, left is brake. Now, you may have heard of some of the problems with sticky throttles, and Apollo have since addressed this by either replacing them with these new R7 models, which look like the originals. They are only differentiated by the L or the R molded into the plastic. However, there still have been several reports from customers that their units have been sticky, even after the apparent fix. And others have received a more off-the-shelf looking alternative that resolves the sticking issue, however, seems to hinder the mechanical brake lever positions. Now, I have the R7 ones, and mine aren't sticky, but they aren't perfectly smooth either. My brake lever is slower to return to position after letting go. That being said, I haven't had any real issues with them either. Right next to the throttle and brake are some buttons. There's turn signals, power button, and mode buttons. Power button on the right turns on the scooter with a long press and then changes the gear with a short press, which are eco, comfort, and sport. And the turn signals emit a beep when in use and show up as a flashing arrow on the display. The mode button on the left activates the lights with a single press, and a double press changes the display readout from trip to odometer. The display is simple with all of the important information available: current speed, odometer, gear, and cruise control. My only gripe is that it's a bit hard to see in bright sunlight. The mechanical brake levers are hefty. They not only use drum brakes, but also turn on the regen brakes when pulled, which is a nice feature, though there is a problem with it, which we'll talk about later. All I will say now is that they are not easy to pull. The bell is simple. It's integrated with the left brake handle and has a nice satisfying ring. And while not particularly loud, it is much easier to use than the bell of something like the 9-Bot Max, as long as you're not wearing gloves. The handlebars have a nice custom look and are sturdy, but the unusual shape makes it hard to attach any accessories. I had to use a sticky GoPro mount to attach my light. Even Apollo's own bag doesn't fit. The straps are too short, and if they did reach, it would block the light. The bag does, however, fit nicely down the stem. But then again, blocking the light wouldn't be the end of the world because the light on this scooter is abysmal, though the rear light is adequate enough. On the other side of the stem, there is the hook. It's kept in place with a magnet, and it can be used to hang a small bag that flops around everywhere if you're in a pinch. But its main purpose is to latch onto this hook on the deck so that the scooter can be lifted, which it accomplishes, but as soon as you put it down, it comes unlatched, which is annoying, and I suspect if it was folded up in the back of a car, it would inflict damage on itself inevitably when it gets jostled around. The head attaches to the stem with 2 screws, and while I was skeptical of this solution, it has held sturdy so far without loosening up at all. By the way, this scooter looks taller than it is. Apollo says it can accommodate someone who is 5 foot to 6 foot 2 inches, and the height from the deck to the grips is about 42 inches, while the 9-Bot Max is 40 inches, and I think the combination of the wide handlebars and the deck height makes it feel huge in comparison. Who knew an extra 2 inches could make such a difference?
Bruh.
The locking folding mechanism is neat. It has 2 steps, so even if it were to become unlatched, it has a secondary failsafe to keep the stem from folding down. It's easy to unlatch and oddly satisfying to latch back up, and there's this little rubber pad in place between the metal parts. Mine has shown some wear at this point. And the mechanism holds tight until it doesn't. I've had to tighten mine a few times, unfortunately. The suspension consists of a single spring in the front and 2 in the back, and I do like the thingy inside that prevents a hard stop. So when the suspension bottoms out, it's not like a really hard stop. It's a nice feature. Fenders attached to the hub, and they are pretty sturdy. They do their job in keeping water off the deck and the rider reasonably well, though this is not without the help of the suspension areas on both the front and the back. The tires are wide, 10 inches, tubeless, and self-healing. There is a lining of goo inside the tires that help seal up punctures, and from what I have seen, they do the job quite well, at least most of the time. For stopping power, apart from the regen brake, there is a drum brake on each wheel. And they do need some adjusting when first out of the box, but after some trial and error, I was able to find a sweet spot teetering on the edge between stopping power and locking up. It is a shame that they're not disc brakes, but the drum brakes should require a lot less maintenance. Finally, the biceps of the scooter, the motors. The City Pro has 2 500-watt motors with a combined peak of 2,000 watts, capable of a top speed of 51 kilometers, though I have reached a max of 55 on a slight downhill. Now, 2 500-watt motors give you substantially less power compared to other scooters in the price range, but I have to say for me, the power you get from these is plenty. The deck is spacious and grippy. It has this slope on the back and works great as a footrest and also a handle to pick it up. There's a kickstand on the left, which has worked as intended and has this little flag off the side so it's easy to pop down with your foot. Now, on the opposite side, there is a charge port. It is small and not keyed, which is a nice feature, but the flap is rather flimsy, making it feel like it'll either let in water at some point or break off, but I haven't had any issues with it or heard of any yet, so I could be wrong there. That's the basic rundown. Let's talk about riding the thing. Now, riding around town on the scooter is a blast. It feels stable and grounded. The throttle and regen brake feel smooth and intuitive, though the regen brake comes on strong, which takes a little getting used to, but after a few rides, it feels natural, and to be honest, I use the regen brake on its own 80+% of the time. While it will take about twice the distance to stop than pulling the brake levers, it works perfectly for anticipated stops. It's honestly fantastic. The scooter effortlessly reaches desired speeds with silky smooth acceleration. The dual 500-watt motors eat up the hills, and I have yet to find a hill that it can't climb, with the lowest speeds I've seen on some of the steepest hills in the mid-20s, and one particular hill in the mid-teens, and to be honest, I didn't think it would make it up that hill at all. Even when carrying my gear for band rehearsal and my massive guitar case weighing over 45 pounds, this scooter keeps going, which with myself, riding gear, and a guitar bag puts the total payload just shy of 265 pounds, which happens to be the max of this scooter. So no problems for the heavier riders. And Apollo rates the scooter at a top speed of 51 kilometers per hour, though I have reached a max of 55. While it is stable enough at the higher speeds, it can be a bit squirrely without a damper, and that's not a feature I expect at this level. However, it could be a nice upgrade in the future. And when riding it, I tend to just leave it in sport mode. I find it gives me more control, though people who have ridden it who happen to be much lighter than me found it a bit too snappy off the line and felt happier in the middle comfort mode, though the acceleration adjustment in the app can also change that. The size of the tires is pretty typical and aren't great at taking bumps, but that's just the nature of these scooters. The wide profile lends a ride that ensures confidence and traction with the road, though the grooves suggest to me less than optimal water displacement. I would like to see how they stack up to something that they're using over at Segway with that tread looking like it's off a car. The suspension provides a nice cushy feel while maintaining its sportiness, and that being said, the suspension is no magic wand. The tires are small. The big bumps are still going to sneak up on you with a jolt, but it does soften a lot of your typical city ride, making commutes much more comfortable. I have found, though, that since there is no damping, the spring suspension can lead to some instances of increased vibrations when riding at high speeds or over bumpy gravel paths and old brick roads, and in some circumstances, it may even be worse than something without suspension. But overall, a much welcome upgrade, one that I'm not going to go without again. For the brakes, the electric regen brakes, like I said, are fantastic, and the drum brakes are good. However, there are 2 problems with the brake levers. One is being hefty. They need a real squeeze to use effectively, and I don't have small hands. I'm a fit person, and I don't say this to toot my own horn, but to emphasize the power it requires to pull on these brakes, because even for me, they aren't exactly easy and comfortable to use. It may have to do with the spring, which looks like it's already starting to oxidize. And the second problem is position. So I'm 6'1", and for me, the position is not comfortable to use. They stick out more straightforward than I would like, making it hard to get the brakes in a panic. And the fix should be easy. Loosen the screw, reposition, and tighten. It's easy, sure, except for me, it caused a problem. The regen brake came on full strength mid-ride without warning, which is sketchy to say the least. The brake stayed on and I had to walk it home before getting help from support to identify and fix the issue. It could have been worse though. I could have crashed, which happened to another user, or snapped the wire inside the brake, leaving no easy fix for another. So those two problems leave the brakes hard to pull and in a bad position. And the pull strength required aside, braking is quite good. It's not going to be as good as disc brakes, but the combination of the regen brake and the drum brake creates adequate stopping power, even when trying to stop from near top speed. And that leads to the problem, which is the recommendation by Apollo to not use the regen brakes until the battery has reached 90% or below, creating a learning curve. And I had to train myself to not use that regen brake lever until the app told me it was below 90%. However, even doing that, as far as I can tell, the regen brakes engage when pulling the mechanical levers, no matter the battery percentage. So before the drum brakes are actually creating any stopping power, you can feel the regen brakes engage. So the scooter is designed to disregard Apollo's own recommendation. And since I alluded to the app, let's talk about it. It's quite good, and I'm well aware that many people have had plenty of issues with it. Some have had the experience of it not working at all. But for me, the app has been good. It was a breeze to get going during my first day with a scooter. It displays your speed in big numbers, and the estimated range remaining is accurate, at least when the battery is at 100%. You can record rides that give you a bunch of stats, including accumulated stats over time, like total distance, longest ride, and top speeds reached. You can easily lock the scooter and put it in park mode, which is unlockable with the user set code. The lights, cruise control, and gears are easily accessible. And from there, more settings are found where you can change the top speed limit, acceleration, braking, cruise control time activation, and kickstart. You can connect multiple phones to the scooter for multiple users, or for me, this works so I can use my old phone as a semi-permanent scooter display. Though the downside of this, since I don't keep a plan for that phone, is the lack of map accessibility. But to be honest, I find the map mostly useless. If I need directions, I'll just put my other phone in there and use Google Maps. And all that stuff is pretty good. But the coolest thing is the ability to name the scooter.
Hey, Lenish.
Like I said, it's been pretty good, though I have experienced a few errors and minor annoyances. There's typos and issues with spacing, pop-ups. Every time you connect to the scooter, battery gets lower, the scooter disconnects, there's a pop-up that needs manual dismissing. I would appreciate if these went away on their own, didn't block the majority of the display, or just didn't show up at all. Another problem is the imprecise battery reading. Anytime the battery changes, it usually does so by several percentage points. But not only that, it will also jump back up from a lower number once you have stopped for even a few moments. Like the regen brake isn't going to regenerate 5% of the battery when stopping. And this leads to imprecise range estimates once you've gone below 100%. And while the app is good, it would be nice to have all, at least maybe some of those features available on the scooter itself. As for the range, Apollo claims a maximum range of 61 kilometers. Of course, that is typically done in the most ideal conditions. I tested the real world range, getting 36.2 kilometers from 100% battery to zero. And like I mentioned, the app was very accurate, estimating 36 kilometers at full battery. And Apollo CTO said that this estimate is based on the average of all rides. Battery charge time is not bad from 0 to 100%. It takes about 6 hours and consumes just under 1 kilowatt hour. And something I'm not a huge fan of is the lack of indication on how the battery is doing while charging. The only indication you get is the light on the brick indicating whether it's charging or not. An implementation like that on the 9bot Max would be muchly appreciated. Another feature I'd like to mention are the buttons. They are not easy to use. They're small and need a precise and strong press to activate. Without gloves, it's okay, but with gloves, especially anything thicker than light biking gloves, it becomes very difficult. I have read, though, that people have had a better experience with the buttons on the new different-looking throttles. And two is the turn signal positions. They force you to either let go of the throttle or brake to press, which leads to me using them less often than I would like. And the light, like I said, is abysmal, and I really mean it. Just look at it next to the light on the 9bot Max. Even with the brake cables out of the way, the light on the Apollo is washed out and spread too wide. It's mostly useful as an indicator to pedestrians and road users that you exist. At night, I would not rely on this to see what's in front of me, especially at speed. Even my external light on the lowest setting blows it away, which is still not quite bright enough for me for night riding. So I bump it up to that medium brightness, which in contrast to the Apollo, it really highlights the need for a boost in lumens. So Apollo claims that it is 500 lumens, but At least to me, it doesn't seem to be the case. This O-light has been fantastic, by the way. If you need one, the link is down below. The rear light, however, does the trick. It's sharp and visible at night. Or imagine it's bright. My rear light stopped working around the 300 kilometer mark. When it is working, the lights turn on when using the brakes. Though when all the lights are on, it doesn't indicate braking. It just stays on. Having it flash would be a nice feature. The turn signals are big and bright enough, though they aren't really visible from the front. It would be nice to have some on the front of the deck as well. Now to the locking mechanism. When it's in tip-top shape, it's solid as a rock. It feels great, but there's an issue. For me, this locking mechanism has come loose on multiple occasions. After a week of using the scooter, I noticed the slightest wobble in the stem, and the next day it was worse. So I figured out how to fix it. And it wasn't hard to do, but it was a bit annoying. Good thing I have a bag to hold the tools, because a few days later, the wobble came back. I fixed it again. A couple days go by, it's back again. I fix it. What stopped this cycle was not folding the scooter up at work. Well, it slowed the cycle because after a few weeks, it came back again, which is really just annoying for me, but it could be much worse. It may have even been a contributing factor to this user's cracked stem. It appears as if the loose mechanism led to a lot of wear on the stem. And this user claims to only have had put 400 kilometers or less on their scooter. And in comparison, mine has over 500 with almost no wear. As for portability, this thing is on the heavier side, weighing 65 pounds. The lack of a locking mechanism when folded down is a pretty glaring flaw, which I am sure will lead to an accident for someone at some point. I personally use the handle of the back, or either grab the stem or the area just above the front suspension to lift it up. I don't have too much trouble lifting it a few steps or into the back of a car, but I wouldn't want to haul it up a couple flights every day. Rolling it around isn't particularly easy. The small tires and leverage point being where it is makes it a minor pain to push over even the smallest transitions. It is also pretty big, especially with the wide handlebars. I'm not going to be taking this into any shops. And then there is the water resistance rating. And this is where the city sets itself apart from the competition in a big way. With that rating of IP66, it's basically at the top. And that last digit being the most important, that 6 means protection against powerful water jets. And some scooters will have an IPX5 rating, and that means protection against water jets. The 9bot Max would be one of those scooters. However, most scooters with any power or suspension usually have a rating of IPX4, meaning protection against splashing water. And Apollo's own Phantom has that rating, and you can even see how water gets into the deck in one of their own videos.
A little bit of water. Matunga, you know that you shouldn't be riding in water.
Or the Cabo Mantis 10, a different scooter that I was looking to buy until I saw this video.
Mantis 10, water damage. Mantis 10, water damage. Mantis 10, water damage. Mantis 10, water damage. Your Mantises are not waterproof. If you want to ride them in the rain, don't ride them in the rain.
The only other competitors with similar ratings I can think of is the eMove Cruiser matching with the IPX6, or the new Segway models in Nami Bernie 2 that have an overall IPX5 rating and the controller getting a higher IPX7 rating. Now, when I was using my 9bot Max Commute, I felt with that IPX5, I was confident with the water resistance rating, and I rode it as such, rain or shine, no problems. So taking that up a notch gives me extra peace of mind, which is worth a lot when you live where I do in the Pacific Northwest. It's not exactly known for its sunny days. That being said, I hope the scooter is true to the rating because the fenders could do a better job. While I usually don't get too much splashback, I tend to see some fine spray on the back of my legs after a wet ride, or this mess after doing some shooting, granted I was riding in the mud. The suspension in both the front and the back unfortunately collects all sorts of crap, especially in the fall, which is a pain in the butt to clean and also makes the great looking orange springs a target for hard bits that want to chip the paint. And I understand it would be hard to extend the fenders further without compromising the suspension travel, but it would be nice to have more coverage. Maintenance of the scooter is a little bit more involved than its simpler counterparts, mainly due to the suspension, which requires periodic lubrication, but really isn't needed until you hear creaking or squeaking. I have only heard some minor creaks, and I tend to lube it up every week after a wash-up. And a wash-up that is needed because this thing gets filthy. As I mentioned before, the fenders don't do the best job, leaving quite a bit of gunk caked onto the scooter. I have done this nearly every week for the past 2 months, and I look forward to the summer when I don't have to do it. And riding in this weather has quickly shown which parts likely won't last. Even after 2 months, rust is showing up in a few places, but my main concern are the brake springs. The drum brakes I have readjusted once since the first couple days, and they shouldn't need much until, well, I think this scooter will probably be done before they actually need any real work. And I've checked the tire pressure a few times since I first got the scooter, and it's been fine. No need to add more air yet. And tightening of the screws is usually recommended once in a while. You'll need a Phillips head screwdriver and a set of metric Allen keys. I've only done it twice, but I haven't found anything particularly loose. That's pretty much the scooter, but let's summarize it with the good, the bad, and the ugly. Starting with the good. My correspondence with Apollo has been quick and positive, and support, in my experience, has been fantastic. And I'm in the middle of getting that rear light replaced, and it's been great. But the scooter, it looks great. I mean, compared to almost any scooter, it's not some Franken scooter. It doesn't look like a bunch of crap off the shelf slapped together. It's just clean. It's got plenty of speed for the city. It's got power to climb hills, adequate range, suspension to dull the bumps, excellent regen brakes, low maintenance drum brakes, simple integrated display, double locking folding mechanism, flat resistance, tubeless tires, a grippy and spacious deck, and excellent water resistance. In the bad, we've got sticky throttles, buttons are hard to press, handlebar shape makes it hard to attach accessories, the front light sucks, the rear light broken, stem doesn't lock when folded, fenders need to be better, flimsy charge port cover, no way to set charge limit, the lack of charge level while charging, suspension vibrations, it's heavy, and it's a little expensive compared to other scooters with similar power. Now I'd like to reiterate with that last point and ask the scooter community, do any of those more powerful scooters at a similar price to the Apollo City Pro have a comparable water resistance rating? Because every time somebody calls me an idiot for not buying a better scooter for the same price, I ask them to recommend me one that's comparable with the water resistance rating, and I've yet to receive a reply. And the ugly. And this has two parts, the scooter and the company. So the scooter, the stem wobble, both the issue I have experienced and the wobble issues others have experienced, which requires a special tool to remedy. No good. Just no. Charger's breaking. This isn't a problem that I've had, but some people are only getting 1 or 2 charges before their charger stops working. Regen brakes coming on without warning that I and others have experienced. Dangerous. Brake levers too hard to pull, also potentially dangerous. Sticky throttle issue, also another potentially dangerous issue. And those are the biggest problems I see with the scooter, which are really the points that keep me from fully recommending it. But the company, well, some of the things I'm about to share might be illegal, some simply unethical, at least in my opinion. However, let me just be clear that I'm not a lawyer. So let's start with the potentially illegal, something I like to call the phony sale. It's known as fictitious or deceptive pricing in the US, and here in Canada it's defined within the Competition Act under deceptive marketing practices, where it is outlined under ordinary price, which may be applicable when a company or person have not sold a substantial volume of the product at that price or a higher price within a reasonable period of time before or after the making of the representation, and have not offered the product at that price or a higher price in good faith for a substantial period of time recently before or immediately after the making of the representation.
Jesus.
Essentially, the phony sale is when a company offers a product at a discounted price even though it never really was offered at that higher original price. And I would argue that Apollo has used this trick in 2 ways. First, their scooters are often on sale, starting with their Black Friday sale, which slashed the price of the City Pro by $200 in Canada and $300 in the US store. And the thing is, it wasn't Black Friday. It started at the beginning of November, possibly even in the last week of October, and has been on sale for, well, it's still on sale today. It's January 3rd, so it's been on sale for over 2 months at this point. And before that, for as long as I can remember, when I was following this scooter, it'd go on sale every other week, leaving only a small amount of time that was actually on sale for the original price. And with that alone, I think there's a strong point to be made about fictitious pricing. However, there is a second point to reinforce it, which is that when they began the Black Friday sale, they also simultaneously raised the original price. And we can see in October, the price was $15.99. But when they roll out the Black Friday sale and claim that
Can now be yours for $300 off.
we can see that the $300 off may be true on paper, the price bump of the $200 effectively makes it a $100 sale. And since around the beginning of December, the scooter has been on sale for $15.99, which is the regular price before November 2022. And in Canada, they raised the original price by $100 and have kept the $200 off sale steady since November. Now, under the Competition Act, it does specify immediately after the making of the representation. So I suppose if they offer the scooter for a reasonable amount of time after the sale is over, then it'd be okay. But still, it's not a good look when you raise the price, then post a video claiming
Can now be yours for $300 off.
All right, it's Nick here in the edit bay. I have a cold and I made a mistake. I thought they had increased the price. However, it turns out that since I had only been following the scooter from the beginning of October of 2022, I did not know that the price before that point used to be $17.99. That's my bad. That being said, some legend saved the city page on the Wayback Machine every single week, so thank you. Because as it turns out, of the 41 weeks since Apollo launched the pre-order for the city, only 8 of those weeks did not have a slashed price. 8. In 5 weeks from those, that's the end of September, through October, had a price of $15.99, so we won't count those, leaving only 3 of the 8 weeks at the price of $17.99. But of those weeks, 2 of them had a $200 off code, effectively making a sale price of $15.99, leaving only the week of September 6th, where it was on sale for the full $17.99. Just kidding, there was a 15% discount. So there you have it. As far as I can tell, this scooter has never been for sale at $17.99, and you might be forgiven for thinking the actual original price is $15.99, which makes it awkward when you realize it is now on sale for $100 more than that. But back to the other plaid shirt guy with more.
Another is the sale countdown, which I've seen many times. It puts pressure on customers to buy now, even though the sale continues when the timer runs out. Review curation. This is a common practice for many companies. It's easily spotted when there are 0 1-star reviews. And in the case of Apollo, they seem to remove all of the 1-star and 2-star reviews, or maybe they just don't allow them to be posted at all. I tried signing in and posting a review and could not get one posted. Warranty is usually a nice thing to have, and I've noticed they used to offer 2 years warranties for some of their older models, but now only offer 1 year for the city. And there are probably multiple reasons for that. I don't think it's malicious or anything. It's just too bad. Another thing that caught my eye was the defect coverage, which says all scooters come with our defect coverage service, which offers a replacement unit in the event of defects reported within the first 30 days or 10 kilometers. It only takes 20 minutes to ride 10 kilometers on this thing. It's not enough. We've already seen one user who had their scooter for only 46 hours before some defects showed up and has now waited over a month to see any service on their scooter. That could be much better. That really shouldn't happen. And the long turnaround times aren't isolated to that. We've seen it with many other people. And like I said, a lot of that warranty stuff, I don't think that's malicious. That could simply just be a staffing problem. Now, all of that being said, what I'm not trying to do here is slam Apollo and say they suck. It's a terrible company. Don't buy their scooters. No, that's not what I'm trying to do here. I just want to share my experience so that other potential buyers can be aware of the state of things, and also give Apollo a clear picture of what a customer's perception is, and hopefully take this feedback into consideration and improve. And let me be clear, I think Apollo is trailblazing right now. It's a company that isn't afraid to share the faces of the people working on these scooters who are clearly very passionate about their work. And I believe this new city is going to be one of the scooters to kick other scooter manufacturers into gear because it has several features that should be a given on any new scooter today, especially ones claiming to be for commuting. And that water resistance rating is at the top of the list. So ultimately, what this looks like to me is a company honestly doing its best to be at the forefront of the scooter world, making a few mistakes along the way. And I truly wish them the best and look forward to what they have to create in the future. So in conclusion, this is a great scooter. However, the stem wobble, sticky throttle, and brake issues prevent the City Pro from lining up from what I believe are the most important characteristics of a commuter scooter. It should be safe and it should be reliable. And it is just on the edge of getting that all right. And I suspect it will very soon. So keep your eyes peeled. And the asterisk, of course, is if you're someone who needs a water-resistant scooter and you don't mind the possibility of tinkering and are willing to take a gamble on some of the issues I have mentioned, then this still might be the scooter for you. I would still make the same purchase because at the end of the day, for me, it gets the job done and it's a joy to ride. But for the rest of you wondering if you should pull the trigger, I would say the same thing that I said to my colleague who asked if they should buy the Apollo City Pro. And I said no. Not yet.